All right, we're back with another episode of Go FUD Yourself, but we're doing it a little bit different this time. As you can tell, we're on location.
It's a lot different.
It's weird to be in the same room as all you guys, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of strange.
We've
done a lot of podcasts with Bolan, and this is the first time in person, so that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Exciting.
And so the point of today's conversation, I think, is really to talk from a builder's perspective. Both of these guys have been involved with, multiple cycle projects that are pretty exciting. Two of my favorite projects. So try to get their perspective on what it's like to be a builder. What are some of the things that you've gone through that you didn't expect to have to go through? And obviously, both your teams have been very agile and committed, and in the end, successful by kind of that stick-to-itiveness. But it's not as simple as it seems. So hopefully, we're going to talk just a little bit about like raw, real experiences, and then for our viewers that are thinking about joining the space or building, at least then they have a proper perspective. Sound fair?
Okay,
Yeah.
well, to be
Sounds
fair, though,
awesome.
they're going to be building in a bowl, and you guys had to build in a bear.
Very different worlds.
Well, that's actually a good part of the conversation. It's what the differences between changing narratives, changing cycles, all that stuff. We'll get into it. But before we get there, quick introductions. Good friend Brendon from Core. What's Core all about, man?
Yeah, appreciate it. First of all, love the podcast, long-time listener, so excited to be on it. But yeah, I'm from Core. I think we'll talk more about it after, but we're basically an EVM-compatible layer 1 built on top of Bitcoin. So we actually are very Bitcoin aligned. We include Bitcoin miners in our consensus and have over 50% of Bitcoin's hash already securing the core blockchain. So super excited, big narrative, and a lot of other updates, but that's what we do in a nutshell.
Amazing. I'm a big fan, honestly. If you're not familiar with Core, check them out.
Our best friend.
Best friend, Bolan.
Bolon, who's had to sit here with me for 2 hours today.
I've done worse.
Bolon from DeFi Kingdoms. Who are you? What have you built?
So I am the director of player engagement, and DeFi Kingdoms is a pixel art-based RPG built almost entirely on blockchain. We are currently on 2 chains, one of which is DFK chain, our very own Avalanche subnet. The other one is Clayton. And then we actually just announced yesterday a partnership with a 3rd chain, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. But very exciting.
Stinking exciting. All right. And do you want to quickly introduce the little guy on the table?
Sure. This is a bloater. So this is actually one of the items you can get in game. All of our items are tokenized, so they're all ERC20s. And this is one of the fish you can get when you send your heroes fishing. He's the bloater.
And it turns out, we were talking about this before, but it turns out that it's the most useless item in the game.
It is, yes.
But everybody's obsessed with it.
Yeah.
Well, that's why they're obsessed with it.
You can't do anything with it but trade it for gold, which is one of our in-game currencies. But that's it. Like, you don't use it to craft anything or anything like that. But hey, that's okay. It looks cute and it's a grumpy fish.
Nonetheless,
what more can you want?
Meme.
Well,
Bolan's going to send me some in the mail, so
It's true.
my kids are going to be excited.
that's still JD.
Yeah, I'm still JD.
I'm still Ceara. Are you ready to FUD?
Are you sure?
Ready to FUD.
It's been a long conference. What could be
Let's
anyone by now?
fucking go. All right, so let's start it off. I'll ask kind of one of the first questions, and I'll start with you, Bolan. I know before we get too deep into a lot of the challenges that you guys have had to overcome over the years, what's like kind of the common theme that you'd like to tell people that are thinking about joining the space, thinking about building something? Is there any like initial advice? Like, what's your
Be
kinda-
committed.
Be committed.
Be committed. If you are serious about building something in this space, it's not going to always be going well. Just know going in, there will be hurdles, there will be obstacles, there will be Twitter. Just be committed. Make sure it's something that you're serious about and want to do, and it can be an absolute blast. Like this is the best job I've ever had. I love it. I have no regrets and do not want to go back to anything else. But you got to know that there's going to be stuff that gets in the way, and if it's something that you want to dedicate 5 hours a week to, it's not going to work. You got to be committed.
Brendon, for you guys, one of the really cool things about Core is you guys self-funded, right? Pretty much up until launch, actually. Still, super exciting, but that comes with some challenges too. Like, what do you think is like the common things that you guys learned from that process? Self-funding. Would you do it again?
Yeah, so we we can hop in that. I wanted to double click on the Twitter piece because that's interesting.
There's a funny story there.
Yeah,
Actually.
I want to.
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Maybe after. But yeah, a few things there. So a lot of our team's been around and have built Web 2 products. So we've been in tech a long time, and had actually some of our team have participated in some other early projects in terms of investors like AVAX and early Ethereum, and kind of saw how that all played out. So one of the principles we had with Core was we didn't want any inside token sales. We didn't want any pre-mines. And to do that, we had to self-fund. So the contributors, and I'll make it clear, I'm not a founder of Core. I was an early team member. I came on as one of the first business hires. Yeah, it was really important to self-fund. So the team completely bootstrapped, and we went to mainnet launch pretty much just over a year ago. Launched on like 8 exchanges and did a big airdrop event and had 2 million folks claim in our community. So we'd really built up this huge community beforehand. And instead of raising investment and having kind of pre-mines, we wanted the community to get in on the tokens, day one, and really have a distributed base. And that worked really well. Again, had 2 million claims, and I think now we're up to almost 10 million holders, distributed all over the world. So that was really important to us, but very difficult.
Yeah, so
and we're feeling some of those effects right now. Kind of crossing the chasm on crypto mainstream and things like that without having early VCs or raising that big round. So that's some of the downsides, but it's a decision that we would do again. Actually, Rich and I were talking about it yesterday.
Yes.
This is something really interesting that is with both of you. You're both early team members. What pushed you over to be fully committed to the life?
That's a good question.
It is a good question. And real quick, I'll just add, it's funny too, VCs are so much more eager to give massive raise rounds pre-launch than post-launch, because we also self-funded, and
there you go.
As soon as the token exists, now there's a basis, and they're way more conservative. To answer your question, what pushed me over the line was really just honestly the atmosphere. I came in about 5 weeks after DFK's initial launch. Getting to know the team, getting to know the community and interact. At the time, I was still working a fiat job, allegedly, because I didn't do a whole lot. So I had
Don't tell anybody.
Yeah, no, I was work from home for that job, and so I set up in a corner of my office. I had 2 monitors for my fiat job and 2 monitors for DFK. And my theory was, well, I'll just swivel back and forth, but the chair never seemed to turn back, and I was like, well, I'm okay. Well, that's that decision for me. And so I went all in and have been there since.
Nice.
Maybe same question for you, man. That's a good question. I like it.
I'm envisioning you had one of those backgrounds on Google that just kind of, it's like the next version of the glasses, but it's showing you working at the monitor at all times.
You're not
too
wrong.
Yeah, so I'd been a founder CEO before. I built a mobile company and did the whole VC thing and exit. And for me, I was just really impressed with the initial Core contributors, because I think one of the themes here is long-term thinking. And I'd been a crypto bystander investor, playing around on my own, even while I was running my last company. And I saw a lot of the weird behavior, right? And different things. And to me, coming from Web 2, it's a no-brainer you're committed for 10 years, right? It takes 10 years to get a liquidity event. So that was really different, observing from the periphery. So when I met the Core guys, I'd known them from my previous life. As a startup founder, I was just super impressed because that's all they talked about was long-term approach. And the community they'd built up was super impressive. I was very wild kind of game mechanics that were, again, very similar to what we had done in my last startup. So I was just really impressed. And I'm a Bitcoiner at heart, not a Bitcoin maxi, but I like all things, but I really respect and love Bitcoin. So it was just, once I was in, I was in. Initially I was like, no, I'm a founder. That's my identity. I'm going to start a new company. But again, for all those reasons, it just felt really great. So haven't looked back since.
What caused you to take the plunge?
I have a very different side. What I heard from both of you is there's kind of this community and there's a lot of excitement and that sort of thing. And I was actually working at a post-secondary institution on blockchain credentialing. I don't know if you remember that.
I did the interview.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. I don't know.
It was a while ago.
But
Are you calling JD old?
I am old. I have no hair. It's crazy. I'm going great, dude.
Yeah, I was gonna say, have you seen
Bro,
his beard?
look at that. Look at that.
It's sophistication.
Exactly.
Yeah,
It's
salt and
Yeah, it
class.
gives you some character.
That's right.
Salt and pepper. It's just spicing up life. But I was working on blockchain credentials for new immigrants to Canada so that they could take what they had already learned at previous post-secondaries, bring them to Canada, and not necessarily have to take Math 30 again or Algebra 101 or something like that. Now, this wasn't at such a high level that something like a doctor would be able to come over, but it was for things like healthcare aides, business diplomas, that sort of thing. And that technology is actually now used by NATE, the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, and not the organization I built it with. But I liked the idea of that personal ownership and of being responsible for it yourself. So not being served by these institutions forever, but how you could take control of that for your own life and allow it to serve you and manipulate it in the ways that you needed. And then JD actually introduced me to DeFi, and that's like the next step, right? It's a pretty natural progression.
And then the rabbit hole happens.
Yeah, now I'm
Right.
here.
Here we are.
Now I'm here.
Yeah, we've all been
podcasting.
there.
now we're all here kind of wondering where the hell we are and how we got here, but
And the two of you somehow host a podcast every day of the week. So,
Yeah. we were talking about it before we started recording here, but we're over 300 episodes. It's kind of insane.
that is
actually.
insane. That is a lot.
I can't
of
believe people
episodes.
still listen to us.
When's it going
That's
to be
the bigger-
10,000 hours?
I don't know. 300
Is it-
episodes
it
is
doesn't
only
get there soon.
150
Yeah,
hours.
we're not that practiced
I
yet.
think
Still
20,000
early
episodes
stages.
would be 10,000
Yeah,
hours.
we are far from experts at this.
That's like
but
when someone said, "How long did it take you to hit 100 episodes?" And I said, 100.
100 days. But yeah, so we're expanding the show now, though, which is kind of cool. We're doing more stuff like this. We're going to do a lot more on location things.
Whoa, you don't get to get out of this.
What?
How did you stumble into DeFi?
Oh, yeah.
How did you go down the rabbit hole and never leave? How did you leave your day job?
I still ask myself that all the time. Like, what the hell am I doing? Honestly, I mean, I was an entrepreneur for my entire life. So prior to this, I had a brand and marketing company, but that was very intentional. Actually, it was geared specifically towards fintech and blockchain. And before that, I was a partner in TradFi for more than a decade in Canada. Left TradFi because I struggled with, there was very much a dichotomy between the success of the client and the success of the corp. And they were almost mutually exclusive. At least we felt so. And I just thought there's got to be a better way, like this smoke and mirrors. And at the time, like TradFi has changed a lot since I was there. But at the time, all the fees were hidden, and you were charging like exorbitant amounts of money for people. And I just didn't align with me philosophically. So I was like, I got to go. There's got to be something better. What's the next like wave of financial innovation? And I'm a little crazy, and I'd been trading, and hey, we got a new sound guy. A little crazy, had been trading and playing in crypto for a long time, and knew my co-founders for a while for Rome Blockchain, and we just decided one day, hey, there's a bunch of problems in the space that we think we have solutions to. And in hindsight, some of them were right, some of them maybe not so right, but we've had a lot of fun. It's been really cool building kind of that like leading edge of a technology because you're building things that other people haven't. And for me, that's what it's all about. I mean,
Here's a big question, though. We're here to talk about the FUD, what happened during a bear market.
right.
And all of us stayed. So what kept you here? What kept you motivated through that time?
That's a good question. Man, I don't even need to be here anymore. Just like Ceara ask all the questions, and we're good. Who wants to go?
First?
Yeah, I mean, I think there. I mean, the philosophical. There's like the boring and then philosophical, inspiring.
Just honest.
things.
I just want the honest one.
No, I mean, there's both, right? So inspiring. It's like similarly when I was dabbling in crypto, I loved the self sovereignty, no gatekeepers, just being able to rely on yourself, enter this financial system, and I wanted to enable that. And I also, like in my last company, had a lot of TradFi components in the construction space. So a lot of payments, peer-to-peer payments, financing, things like that. And a lot of those systems could be a lot more efficient. And it was like the loans were very expensive and inefficient. So I think that's like a mission that I just align with. But on a practical level, I just dealt with a lot of adversity. Like my last startup laid off a ton of people at one point. You see VC markets that were really hot, high valuations, and when we started, it wasn't. So I've just kind of seen a lot of cycles. And then with crypto, when you go through a bear bust, you realize it's just signal noise, right? And if you really like what you're doing or believe in it, it really doesn't matter. It's just noise at the end of the day. So you got to focus on the signal. So if you've been through some of these, I think I've only been through 2. You're very confident it's all going to come back, and token price, etc., is a bit of a distraction, right?
So we're not going to zero. You don't think?
Nah.
Crypto is dead, is what I heard.
This is
Yeah.
this is purely financial advice.
I
from
like
Core.
not financially advice. No, I love that meme of the guy on Rogan, right, saying it's going to go to 0 or below 0,
Yeah.
like 2 months ago.
Well, I mean,
ETH Denver's actually the funeral. This is it.
this is it. It's over.
It's awake.
Great, we're shutting down.
For the last few years, this was a super spreader.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that like all the people we've made out with this week, I'm hoping none of them had COVID. Like I don't know.
I hope they do.
I hope so too.
We're
Anyway,
strengthening. We're strengthening. Immunity.
that's right. Immune
It's for the
system.
greater good.
We're building
For
it
the
up.
greater good.
Well, and
How
what
about
kept
you,
you
man?
motivated?
Yeah, what
Yeah.
kept you going?
No, so fully agree. Like everything is cyclical, and if you know that going in, then it's just kind of part of the deal, right? And for us, like me personally, but also our team, like we really don't even look at our token price that often. Like obviously we're aware of it, but it's not our number one priority because we're building something, and that's our goal. And that's really honestly that was the biggest motivator. Was we set out to build an awesome damn game on a blockchain, and we're gonna do it. And if the market sucks, fine, we'll deal with it.
Yeah.
But actually, one of our founder, Frisky Fox, said in an AMA one time, just off the cuff, he's like, market up, we build, market down, we build, market sideways, we build. And that's kind of become like our unofficial mantra is just, keep working on it, keep building it, and do what you set out to do.
So to kind of deepen in that conversation a little bit with both of you, what's been really interesting as an outsider watching both companies evolve over the last couple of years is that your teams have remained focused, have remained committed, hardworking, at least from the outside. I mean, obviously there's challenges internally, but is there anything in particular that you would say like leadership or the founders or anybody kind of said or did throughout the bear market that kept most of you motivated and excited and feeling some sense of security? Because that's another problem. Like, and we'll talk about this later, but was there anything in particular that you would say your team has done incredibly well that led to that kind of stickiness?
I think we just as a whole, like we just bonded so like hard, especially in the early days. We launched before the bear market, but near the end of the last bull market.
Yeah.
And, in a way, that experience was very bonding in itself. And then, I think like just as a whole, we've built such like deep interpersonal relationships that like we have fantastic leadership as well with our founders and our president Dreamer, no doubt about that. But we've bonded so much as a team that we just kind of keep ourselves going or keep each other going. That is all the time. We have a weekly meeting where it's just the whole team and we all come in and we, talk about whatever. We give updates or we don't. We just kind of cheer each other on. And I think that goes a long way. To remember that, even when the market is down and, everything sucks around you, if you keep cheering your team on, your team cheers you on, and then it just keeps everybody feeling much more alive.
Awesome.
Well, and what I heard from you is that you all trauma bonded.
I actually tried to specifically avoid that, but yes, it was in my head. I was like, don't say it. But yeah.
No,
a little bit.
I'm teasing. You
Not
actually,
proud of
you
that.
really highlighted a lot of that interpersonal relationship
Yeah.
and part of the core contributors, right? Which is what you said got you on board. Is that what kept you there?
Yeah.
I can touch on that for sure. I'm curious how you guys remote
Yeah.
when you did that? Yeah, so
Yeah,
that's
we've
like
always been
that's
remote.
another challenge on top
Yeah.
of everything,
my
right?
next
It's-
question.
It's generally okay. So
Not
we'll
anymore.
let's save that. We'll save that one.
You really are just getting front run.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. Just
Oh,
being
okay.
front run all session long. But so the question was what kept us going?
No. So what, like,
Yeah,
what,
early on?
what aspects of team leadership, your founders, is there anything in particular they did that like kept the rest of the crew feeling motivated or feeling at least aware of like the health of the company? Or because that's another thing, right? Like
Oh, yeah.
employees are worried about like, am I going to get paid? Am I going to have a job in a month? Like,
Yep.
it's doom and gloom like out
Yeah.
there. When everything's down 99%, like your employees, if they haven't done that before, they're like, what the hell
Yeah.
are we going to do here? So yeah.
Yeah. So to be fair, I think we launched right in the middle of the bear, January of
About as
20
bare as you can
It
be.
was like February 2023, I think.
Oh, that's a horrible time.
Yeah. That's when we launched mainnet, launched the token. We're just like, fuck it. It's not gonna matter, right? We want to get this out. Mainnet's getting out, and this is long-term vision. Like, for example, our block rewards are 81 years long. Like, we're taking a really long vision here. But I can kind of speak generally because we haven't, we've been live for just about a year, but I think the team initially is quite small. And initially you want to attract people that are there for the mission. They're not there for the paycheck. So that you kind of like self-select a little bit early on, where you've got people who are like evangelists and really believe, and they can take on way more work, and they just generally believe in the mission of the company. That's definitely where I stood. And I think a lot of the early contributors stood with Core. So we were just like very intrinsically motivated. And that's generally what you look for in the first people to join the team. With that being said, it's still hard. So you want to, spend time. You want to paint a bigger picture, and really paint like a long-term vision so that people can see that. Even though you're not there, you're making progress towards that every day, even if it's a bear market and the greater macro conditions are tougher. So I think that's really important, as leaders and peers. I think we did a lot of that, and generally we just had a lot of high-quality people that are intrinsically motivated. When you got a big team that's like 1,000 people, it's like moving a fucking cruise ship.
Yeah.
So I think you got to be careful around where your team's at and like where you're at in the market, but it's a lot more difficult at that point. I think then the leadership piece comes quite a bit stronger there. You got to be constantly reiterating the mission vision and where things are going, so that people can see a path towards where you're going.
Yeah.
I'd like to request an entire episode on hiring in Web3.
There you go.
That'd be fun.
Honestly, there's like we've come up with a ton of ideas and like have a great network of you guys to tap into.
It's very different.
But yeah, it's totally different. And like trying to find career progression for people. Ceara and I talk about this a lot. Like, what does that look like? Like, how do you build that in a way that people feel like they're furthering themselves too? And so. I'll speak just briefly on some of the challenges we've had, because I don't want to ask you what we did awesome.
Thanks.
But I think there's a few lessons that we learned, and maybe this is like kind of the fuddy side of things. But I think as your natural tendency as like a leader of a household, a leader of a company, whatever it is to try to protect everybody as best you can from all the nonsense and all the noise, right? But the problem with that is, what you unintentionally do is you leave people out in the dark, right? And so in the absence of information, people will create it. So they'll build a narrative if there isn't one. And so I think as a company, like we have a few employees, and we have for a while. So it's a little bit different. We're dispersed entirely all over the globe, which is my next question for you guys. But I think we did a really poor job, especially initially, at communicating with our entire teams. I think there's a lot of people that had to like seriously ask for answers before they got them. And that's not good for building confidence. Like, I think we had a vision and we knew like where we were going and how we were going to get through this and what we were going to do on the other end. But if you don't share that, you can't get that bonding experience of your whole team and people buying into that vision.
There's something interesting about that, though. Hiring in Web3 is really different, right? You need people who are committed to this ethos, to these values of transparency and ownership. But if you see staff members not going out to go get their own answers, what does that mean to you about their ethos related to it? But likewise, if you aren't being transparent as leadership, what does that say to them about your true ethos within blockchain, right? Exactly. So it becomes this much more, I find, intricate balance and much more relational than a traditional job.
Yeah.
So
it's...
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say real quick. Sorry. In Web3, it's a lot easier for a single person to completely sink a company.
Yeah.
Especially if they're a dev, where they have potentially access to do malicious things.
Uh-oh.
But even the person who runs your socials account, like, it's a lot easier for a single person to do a lot more damage than in Web2. And so trust is incredibly important. And if you're hiring people that you trust with the health of your project, then you should trust them with the information about the health of your project.
Yeah.
So it's a very two-way street of, transparency, as you said. Like, it's very, very important that you all are on the same page.
So I want to talk a little bit about like multi-cycle and thinking about kind of the ebb and flow of the space. But I think because cycles are so compressed, you talked about the like 7 to 10 year investment cycle in TradFi Web2. Here, your entire cycle at best is like 3.5 years, like peak to trough to peak. And so things happen quickly. They happen often, somewhat unexpectedly. And I think it's that much more important to keep that up. But given the fact that we went from like pure euphoria in 22 to like everybody's dying and FTX is collapsing and like all this money is disappearing, like are we going to make it? And then we're back again. And what has that experience been like, I think, for you guys within your teams? Like, have you found that it's been really like whipsawy? Do people follow the emotional roller coaster, or do you find that everybody's just kind of staying focused and true to the mission?
Want to jump in on that?
Sure.
So to be fair, this is our first cycle, so I'll talk about some of those things, and I think some of the opportunities of that. So it is really different, like coming from trad tech. But at the end of the day, if you're building long term, it's really not going to matter. But one way, I was talking to a great entrepreneur yesterday, and I'll get to the original question too, but I'll kind of just share this.
That's great.
Because you have these ups and downs, right? Instead of this just kind of like linear growth, even most startups, like general tech startups, are on an exponential curve. They're not growing linearly. But with crypto, it's like what you want to do is maximize in these bull markets when there's big awareness, everyone's feeling euphoric. You can kind of get that like a 20x growth. I'm not talking token, just throwing it out there, but just growth in users, and you can really kind of catch those tailwinds. So I think it gives you this opportunity where you really want to catch that tailwind during these euphoric times to get further along, and then you're kind of like timing that every 3 years. Where you're getting at the end of the day in 10, 20 years, it's the same point, but you still want to take advantage of these great times.
Right.
And then the question was with the team, right? Around the
No, just like it can be a very emotionally charged. That the euphoria to the like absolute fear and disappointment.
Yes.
And I mean, none of us are immune to that. But I think, again, I have a heck of a lot more control over what our company does going forward than many people that are kind of at the mercy of what we decide, which is like a totally different perspective, right? So I'm just curious. I know both of your teams are pretty focused on long-term longevity. Is there anything in particular you guys did to like smooth that emotional roller coaster for your teams?
The big thing for core contributors is reiterating the vision.
Yeah.
And I like the point about scaling, because it's almost like the first few people, you almost have this telepathy, right? Where you just know where you're going. Everyone's on the same page, and then you realize it's starting to break down. Yeah. And then you got to create those scalable systems to communicate. Yep. And so we hit that quite a while ago. We're like 55 contributors now. But it was really just about communicating where we're going and having people that actually believe in that. And I think being there for people when it's tough. Sometimes you got to lift each other up. That's like why you have co-founders. It's why you have awesome people around. I'm not always Chip. I'm generally positive. Yeah. But some people aren't always positive, and that's why you're there to pick them up and kind of reiterate where the hell you're going and that excitement. And yeah, I've noticed that in our team and just previous startup. I've had great co-founders that did that for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Similar for you guys.
He nailed it at the end, especially like just being there for each other. Having those co-founders or co-workers or whatever, whoever they are, that you can turn to, and that can turn to you. As you said, like none of us are immune to it, and no matter how much you believe in the vision, in the depths of the worst parts of the market, there will be a day where you're like, man, is this worth doing? And being able to just say like, yeah, I don't know, I'm like, today's rough, and having somebody that you can send that message to or call and them say like, yeah, but this is gonna be great, like we're gonna get through this, it's gonna be good. Like everybody has those days with any job, I don't care what it is, and outside of jobs too, where you're just like, I'm really not feeling this today, and just having those relationships where you can reach out to a teammate that your teammates can reach out to you, and you can be the other side of it for them as well. I think that's crucial. I think it's absolutely crucial.
You said something interesting that at the end of the day, 5, 10, 15 years down the road, none of this shit, like the little ups and blips and bumps and stuff at the beginning, is really going to matter. If you have a long enough time horizon, everything kind of smooths itself over a long enough time period. Which brings me to my next point. When you're in a bull market, I mean, it's all euphoria. People sitting on the outside looking in. Tokens are going up. Meme coins are going. Everybody's making NFTs and all this crap. I think it's really important for people to realize that it's not just a jump in when things are good, make a pile of money, and everything else figures itself out, right? So both of your teams, I want to give you guys a chance to answer this, but both of your teams have gone through some decent adversity over the last little bit. I'm kind of laughing at Bolon a little bit because I think you've gone through more crap than almost any team that I've seen. Which is kind of cool that, at the end of the day, you're still here and still running strong. But I'd love to hear kind of from your perspective. Maybe I don't think we have time to talk about all of them. But,
unless it's a week-long
Checking our
podcast.
watch.
yeah. So maybe highlight, kind of talk about one of the one that sticks out most in your mind, and then what lessons you learned and what you'd hope other people can learn from that.
Yeah, I feel like the easiest reference points are so none of these were us. We have never been hacked, but we've been through 2 bridge hacks, and then
Not one, but 2.
Yeah, not one,
Wow.
but 2. And then actually, I guess to be fair, our Twitter got hacked. If that counts, I don't count that. Yeah, SIM swap. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, all 3 of those were massive pains and very painful. But especially the first one. So we launched in late 2021 on Harmony. And in I guess it was mid 2022. It was beginning of June. The Harmony Horizon Bridge was compromised and drained. And it was like $100 and something million. And that was massive. Like that was the first time that we might be in trouble.
Well, and that bridge hack was like 95% your users, right?
Yeah,
like,
correct.
That's
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah, so at that point, we were about 95% of the transaction volume on Harmony. We were the vast majority of their TVL. Like and so it was as if it was directly to us, even though it wasn't. And that was the first time that we were like, this is bad. This is a problem. And a lot of it was rapid response. As soon as the news broke, we were on calls for I don't even know how long. We were not sleeping, trying to figure out what do we need to do to get past this.
Right.
So thankfully, we had recently gone cross-chain, and we had launched our Avalanche subnet with our second realm, and so we had at least a saving grace. So we could get everybody migrating as much as they could over to, a safe haven.
Right.
Obviously, as far as assets go, though, both ourselves and our players were they were gone. At that point, we did have the vast majority of our treasury on Harmony because, it wasn't top of mind to constantly be bridging everything to other chains. And so we took a very, very significant hit there. But that's where, as mentioned, so much of it boils down to that ethos and that belief in the vision and that belief in the future. Because the same thing, like that happened, and we were like, well, we have to figure this out. We're gonna move everything we can over to DFK chain. We're gonna ultimately migrate that realm, which we didn't come to that decision for a couple months because we were trying to give Harmony a chance to have a recovery plan, which everybody's still waiting for. But sorry, in those times especially, it was like, okay, for us to get through this, it's because we believe in what we're doing and we want to see it through. Yeah. Because if we don't believe in what we're doing, we might as well just pack up now because this is going to be bad. This is going to be rough. This is going to be a lot of work.
So did you guys come up with any procedures that came out of that so that next time you can't necessarily avoid bridge hacks, but one of the interesting themes for many companies that are, multiple cycles now is you go from like a startup, and you guys have gone through this. You go from like 5, everybody has, but you go from like 4 or 5 people, and then all of a sudden you have all these employees.
Yep.
And it's just a totally different dynamic, obviously, with
so we've done a few things since then. We definitely learned some lessons. We try, as far as our treasury goes, we generally don't hold a whole lot of wrap tokens. We make sure we bridge everything back to its native chain and hold it there. We've also done a bit of a better job of diversifying our treasury into different assets, but also taking, honestly, and this is controversial because we're a Web3 project, but taking some of it off the chain, and making sure that we have holdings in USD. so that if the worst happens, we have multiple phases of backup options. And that was a really big learning experience for anybody thinking about starting a project. Move your tokens back to their native chains, have holdings in US, diversify. Look at your project's treasury as a portfolio and diversify it, make it lower risk, and treat it as such. To the point where when we went through our second bridge hack, which was a couple months ago, the Orbit bridge was compromised, which is the main bridge for Clayton. So Clayton themselves was not compromised, but they were the primary bridge provider for Clayton. Obviously we had some impact. We had players that were impacted, of course, but it was much, much lower. Much lower. It was more of like active assets that were impacted rather than our treasury, because we wanted to make sure that we would not be in that position again.
Awesome.
That's wild, man.
Yeah, it's been a fun time.
and there's like 3 or 4 stories he didn't tell you.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
It's crazy.
We could do this for hours.
Like
But how about you guys? How about you guys, Brendon? Like you went from small team in the bear, and like a lot of stuff happens before launch, and eventually someday a fundraise, like who knows, token launch, trying to get DeFi, trying to get adoption. What stands out kind of as one of the biggest hurdles you guys have had to jump over since you've been there?
Yeah, man, this is gonna pale in comparison to that story.
Hey, that's good.
He set you up for failure letting me go first. He knew what was loaded.
But I mean,
like all those bridges.
Yeah. And you guys need to build a bridge too. It sounds.
I don't know.
You gotta build it right. But
make sure it doesn't get compromised.
It'll be called the Diamond Bridge. Diamond.
Yeah,
like
it seems like there's a need for a bridge for these guys.
Right?
Yeah.
Shout out
exclusively
Synapse.
for this project. No, I think I'll just kind of speak higher level. And to me though, this is like normal new product or business launch, right? So I guess I'm personally used to it, and maybe that's why you got to get the right people at the start. It's like when you try and sell something initially, everyone's like, "Fuck off."
Yeah.
Like they don't know
They
whether
don't
it's
like
a
it.
SaaS product. It's a SaaS. I'm advising a couple other early SaaS companies. It's like, yeah, it takes years to figure it out. That's like what a startup is. You're kind of figuring it out as you go along a little bit. It's not like you're flying by the seat of your pants, but you're kind of learning as you go, getting customer input, and it's really hard initially. So you need the right people with the DNA that understand that. And then once you've gotten there, you bring in the people who can scale and are used to operations and things like that. So the big thing with Core, and again, kind of like covering that, is initially pitching was just really hard.
Yeah.
When we launched, even pre-launch, we had no VCs again because we covered that bit. We had no treasury. Everyone wanted grants in the bear market. And like we don't have any money for that.
Us included.
Yeah.
We're lobbying for grants.
Yeah, true. No, and I think we talked about, and it was just like it was tough because no one knew who we were. We had no VC backing, and we had no money pre-launch.
That's a legit challenge.
So everyone, and then after it was like, why are you launching a new L1? Everyone's launching an L1. Bitcoin? What's Bitcoin? Why are you launching? What's Bitcoin? Like, who cares about, So it was a really uphill battle initially, and doing 8 hours of pitching a day, trying to just get people across the line. It was really tough. But I think that's kind of normal with new products and services. And then now, there's a big Bitcoin narrative. There's Bitcoin ETF that has come out. There's the Bitcoin halvening. There's kind of this, there was an event yesterday, Renaissance, but there's, this kind of move back to Bitcoin, and the tides turn. These conversations are super easy. Everyone gets it now.
Talk about timing.
Timing, and I think a lot of products are like that at times. And if you think of most just startups products generally, like timing's almost the most important thing a lot of times.
Right.
You get the great idea, but like sometimes it's too early or too late. I think the hardest thing was just trying to pitch and get it across, and it was an uphill battle, but it was a lot of phone calls, and now it's just a lot easier. And
ride the wave.
It took a lot. Yeah, it took a lot of relationship building. I think we talked to you guys for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
Right. And but you've been an evangelist from the start, which is awesome. I think you saw things.
I'm a
early
big
on.
fan.
Yeah, you saw things early on, but it's been a lot of relationship building for a couple of years to get to where we are now, and a lot of just hard conversations. So yeah.
So go ahead.
Go ahead. It's okay.
I was just gonna say, like, another follow up from all this. I don't want to monopolize the question asking Not that
It's okay. They just won't be that insightful.
normally. Yeah, that's right. They just won't be very good questions.
Oh,
We never even talked about working remote.
That's the second. But yeah, so I do want to talk about that. But I think one of the other things that is a kind of a common theme, I think, through companies that survive and have that kind of stick-to-itiveness and the ones that sort of disappear into nothingness is some financial planning and some financial management. And I can attest to this in this space that during bull markets, raising money is like shooting fish in a bucket, really. Like you have a good idea and you're charismatic and there's checks in the bank in the first week. Like a few projects we've raised for, we raised the entire lot in a week or two, which is insane. Like from pitch to like cash.
Yeah.
And it's a really, really unfair example of, because it gives you this like invincibility, this feeling of invincibility. Like, oh, we raised all this money. We didn't even have a product yet. Like, we're golden. Let's go buy some Lambos and like, well, maybe not buy Lambos, but and then you start acting a little bit differently. You spend money in a way that it's plentiful and that you always have unlimited resources. And then a lot of companies find themselves,
Out of
the tide goes out and they're not wearing pants and they're going, holy crap, we got to lay off team members. Both being self-funded, do you think that was a big key? Going to market without investment set some foundational principles, or what do you think allowed you guys as self-funded with very little resources, as you were talking about, to get through that? What is your approach to planning financially that you think has led to success?
I think every project / chain will be a little bit different in that I think there's a few different methods you can take, and I don't think any of them are necessarily wrong. But when we first started out, we were all paid in our token, and it was not based on USD. It was a number of tokens per hour or whatever, and it was like, look, we're going to try to build this. We don't have any money, so if we're successful, this will be money, and if we're not, then it won't. Right. And we all kind of took on that risk ourselves, right? But we were willing to and happy to. And then the flip side of that is, very important to plan for those bad times, right? And it's hard to do so. And make sure you account for things like bridge hacks. And so, following that event, our whole team went unpaid for a period of time, and it is what it is. We were all willing to do so and wanted to do so to keep the project going. And again, with the right people, but one of those, at least one, and preferably multiple of those people, do need to be financial planning minded, because you cannot count on your token going up
or fundraising.
Or fundraising.
Yes.
Like you have to look at what you have, what you're bringing in, whatever the case may be. Especially for a chain, I imagine some gas fees come to the chain, which is how DFK chain is as well. No shade, but you have to look at what's coming in and how you're going to make that work. You cannot count on external booms of cash. That's just not realistic. They may come, you may get some, and that's fantastic, but that's not what you can plan for. You can only plan for what's happening right now, and you need a couple people who are pretty focused on that to make sure that you are accounting for all possible situations. And if XYZ happens, our runway is this. If if ABC happens, it's this. And those can't just be positive projections. They have to be negative too.
Yeah.
So that you have an idea of what you are capable of doing, what pivots you may need to make, because the sooner you can do it, the better off you are.
Awesome. How about you guys? Any crazy financial management strategies you're doing, or what?
I'll share what I can. I think we're still figuring this out. It's a good question. I think we just learned a lot from previous experience, and then seeing what other chains did in the last cycle, like spend 80% of their treasury in 2 years, which you shouldn't do
On parties.
What's that?
On parties?
Probably parties, hiring
Lambos.
who knows what, right? Who knows what? I think for us, again, like I mentioned, we have a really long-term view on things. So we have a budget and we have enough runway for a couple of years in stables, right? So to basically to cover our operations. And we, as part of our tokenomics, we obviously have a reserve that's meant to last for, it should last decades, frankly. But
Hopefully a long
ideally,
time.
ideally, we're making revenue, and I think ultimately we want a product that makes money and it can work. But we want to have a buffer there.
Yeah.
So we're really thinking like, hey, we're not going to get to profitability in a year. This is a long-term play. I think that's ultimately our goal. So we want to have enough operational capital to get there for a long period of time, and we have a set operating budget for the next 2-3 years that we're sticking to, and what we feel we need to get there. And then like similarly, if we think it needs to change or the market's changing or we need to get more aggressive, we can always have that discussion as contributors. Like it's like strategy 101 with your business, but generally we have our budget kind of mapped out for the next 3 years, and we make sure we have enough operating capital to fund that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like our plan, and we have a big enough reserve to fund ourselves for well over a decade.
I just find this really interesting because we're in Web3, we're in DeFi, we're talking about taking control of finances as individuals, so on and so forth, but we're also talking about how to kind of rely on TradFi and not relying on token go up, right? I think that's pretty interesting. And JD, at Rome Blockchain Labs, you guys have done a great job of this too, not having a token, but having a diversified financial strategy that resulted in no layoffs over the bear market. Can you speak to the same question?
It's huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think we look at employee relationships as a two-way commitment. So if I'm asking you to come leave your relatively safe role and come do something awesome with us and take a bit of a risk, I feel like I am also making a commitment to them that come hell or high water, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that, as long as they're performing, that I'm going to be performing on my side to make sure they're not left in the dark. So luckily, my co-founders are a lot more frugal and financially astute than I am, I think, which is hilarious because I'm the financial planner of the group, actually, like CFP. And so I'm thankful for them, grateful for them, but it was just one of those things that like we just decided I would have sold my condo before I laid people off. Like it was that important. And I don't know if everybody appreciates that commitment, but I think the core group sees that and realizes that we had a lot of days during the bear market because we're not the best at financial planning, or at least haven't been. We've been okay, we've survived, and we didn't have to lay people off, which I'm really proud of. But I think we made a lot of mistakes, like and this is not my first cycle, and so I don't have an excuse of I think drinking the Kool-Aid and buying into euphoria, but I did. And so, you spend a little bit more freely than you think. We weren't crazy about it. Obviously, we didn't buy Lambos. We didn't throw massive parties. We didn't do any of that dumb shit. But we probably spent more than we should have. We probably, on things that didn't move the needle. But yeah, I think, just the severity of the downturn is always shocking.
Yeah.
Like, I remember thinking that we had what I thought was a relatively consistent baseline of revenue. Like there's some revenue that's driven by market conditions, and then there's some revenue that's driven just by us not sucking. And so I thought that our not sucking revenue would be constant no matter what. And we were a little bit wrong in that assumption. So like even the things that you think are sure things aren't.
Yeah.
And especially in a bear market. And so, I think you just have to prepare for the worst. Like, again, back to my point from earlier, a lot of people coming into this space, it's like a FOMO, YOLO, like, hey, the market's going up. This is all the narrative. I know a dev. I can talk. Let's fucking go. Let's build something. Let's do it. And I think, what you realize though is that if you do it properly, I mean, you have to survive multiple cycles. And if you're going to do right by your investors, by your users, you have to take that long-term view. So I don't know. It's I'd like to think we're getting better. I'd like to think that we're building in SOPs and processes to help subsequent cycles. But I'll tell you, there was a lot of days that I'm pretty sure we were looking at each other going, holy crap, like how did we find ourselves here? And there was a lot of days that our employees were probably looking at us going, are you guys okay? Like,
JD, you bring up something that I think is that we should highlight here, being a fuddy episode, which is that as startups, as new founders, as that kind of thing, we're prone to make mistakes. Right? We definitely will make mistakes. We have to learn from those mistakes, but they're amplified in a bear market.
Yeah.
Right? I don't want to say share your biggest mistake because that's maybe a little bit controversial, but would you be comfortable sharing a mistake that you made, that you learned from in this bear market?
I mean, I feel like I did with the Harmony one, but
Well, but that
you know,
wasn't
keep
your fault, right?
Well, but we shouldn't have been keeping our treasury there, and that was a mistake that we learned from.
Okay.
Was don't keep wrap tokens because your one USDC may not be worth a USDC anymore. So I think that's a big one, and I mean honestly, I think similar to what JD was saying earlier in terms of like transparency. Nobody wants to give bad news on a Friday. Like that's not fun. But at the same time, like if you think your employees or your team or whoever, if they are already like potentially uncertain, it's better for them to know than to create the worst narrative possible over the weekend in their heads, because that's what they're going to do.
And they're never as naive as you'd like to think.
Yeah,
I mean, thinking that people aren't concerned and don't notice what's going on out there is very wrong.
And leaders who will sacrifice for their teams get teams that will sacrifice for their leaders.
Hey, I like that.
And that is huge. But yeah, I think those are a couple lessons that we learned. No wrap tokens in your treasury, and definitely like just be honest with people, because they see it anyway, and it's better for them to know the truth than to speculate.
Brendon, any big lessons that you had in the bear market?
Or mistakes that you made?
I mean, I think there's a lot. It's
It's true. Like there's tons, right?
There's so many. I think we underestimated how long it would take to build up, like scale up the contributor team, and thinking we could. It's like that. You want to scale and put the right pieces in place, but you normally don't get it right the first time. So I think there were some mistakes there. On team building and strategizing on the right approach. I think that's probably the biggest thing was, again, because we didn't raise money, we didn't have a really mature team at mainnet launch. And then we had to do BD relationships, et cetera, on a pretty small team. But then we had a treasury to spend on and a budget now. But you can't just build up a team in 30 days, right? And you got to build that bond, that shared understanding. So I think we're in a really good place, but it took us some time to really put those puzzle pieces when we thought it'd be built overnight. And I should have known that too as a previous founder, right? But other than that, it's only been a year since mainnet, so but there's a few other things, but that's probably the biggest.
Plenty of time to make mistakes still.
Yeah. But let's just say we've made many, and some of what, some off podcast.
So
I know it feels funny to talk about mistakes, but I think it's actually a great way to hype up those who are newly building, those who are new to the bull market, is that you are going to make mistakes, and there are ways to come back from it. Right?
So I mean, the theme of Go FUD Yourself is to try to help people, dampen down the FOMO a little bit and not be so devastated by the FUD. And we're kind of trying to do the same thing here for like aspiring builders. That it's not rainbows and unicorns all the time. It's a lot of fun. I wouldn't do anything else. Honestly, it is the most rewarding, exciting career that you could possibly imagine. And I believe we're doing things that actually are making a difference, which is also pretty important. But it's not simple, and it's worth noting that if you're going to do it, like you said, you have to be committed for the long term and so on. Okay, so we're going to end on a little bit of a. So with that, they're going to kick us out of here pretty soon. But I want to give you both of you a chance to talk a little bit about what's exciting about your product. But first, one quick rapid fire question, maybe. Both of you guys have done something absolutely incredible with community building. So both the DFK community, which is very strong and very loyal, and of course I'll let you talk a little bit about Satoshi app and stuff. But like 2 million holders is mental. What did you guys do? Like for people watching, I mean, obviously everybody's like, emissions, airdrops, yada, yada, blah, blah. But you have to have something a little bit more sticky. What did you guys do to really build those tentacles into your communities?
We got to combine the communities, by the way.
Yes, for sure.
So in 1 minute, so I'll try and be really
1 minute.
Yeah, I don't know why you're trying to ask so many questions at the end.
One big thing.
Hey, I got excited.
So I'll just say one big thing. We can go over the Satoshi app strategy, but the big thing for us with the no VCs was we then had a lot of token allocation for the community, 25%. So what was cool for us, no pre-mines, no early tokens. When we did mainnet, that was the first release of any core token, and it went live on exchanges, and the airdrop went live with 2 million claims. So what was cool is 2 million people around the world got in at the ground floor and they felt ownership from the start. And we took years to build that up through an app and gaming and this really fun community building strategy. But I think that for us was very important and
Maybe
has
we
kept
should
the
have-
community so sticky.
We should have them on to talk about Satoshi. 'Cause
Yeah,
that's
I think this is a bigger topic
A bigger
than we're going to
topic.
cover in the next
Man,
10
I was
seconds.
excited about it,
But,
though.
but let's
No,
just
no,
say
no.
I think our community is very sticky for that reason. They got in on the ground floor.
Be honest,
Felt
be
like
transparent,
owners.
foster a fun place for people to be.
So
There you go.
concise.
All right.
Hey, well, with that,
Succinct.
With
But we were
that,
getting kicked out.
we have to say,
we have to say all at the
Doing
same
a lot.
time.
Go
FUD
FUD
yourself.
All right, here we go.
All right.
With that, I have to say, go FUD yourself.
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 Go FUD yourself. I need a spare set of headphones so that the bloater can wear a pair.
So that the what? Oh, that's hilarious. Where'd you get that thing?
They're ours. We made them. You want one? I'll ship you one.
Fucking awesome. Yeah, my
Yeah.
kids would love that shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're gonna have to like get.
Yeah, you
get into
have
it.
to- you
It's
have to
pretty
lick
easy.
it, basically.
Okay, here we go.
There
you
you
guys
go.
hear me
That's
now?
better. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. It messes
Love
with
it.
my head because I'm used to sitting so far back.
Yeah, I just want to
Yeah.
lay back and
But
chill.
at least
but
this way we look attentive, like we care about what JD's saying.
You have to
good
pretend.
students in school.
Oh
I'm
no,
listening.
that's bad.
What?
Why do you do that?
What? It's fine.
We're
And
all
your
good
shirt
students.
sleeves rolled up. You're a mess.
It's because the guns are showing.
Yeah,
This
guys
is the
looking-
Kiara
looking
critique
jacked.
portion of the show.
Yeah, what the fuck?
He's looking jacked.
Get picked on. All right. Are we going?